I remember that evening vividly. It was a Tuesday in October, and the rain was really coming down, drumming against my bedroom window. I was in my room, algebra homework spread out on my bed, completely unaware that my entire life was about to pivot. The air in the house was thick, not just with the storm outside, but with a quiet hum of tension I'd learned to live with. Thunder rolled across the sky, and I heard my younger sister, Chloe's, quick footsteps racing down the hallway toward our mother's room. Chloe was 13 then, 2 years younger than me, and she perfected manipulation in ways I hadn't fully grasped until it was too late. While I spent my afternoons volunteering at the Maplewood Animal Shelter and maintaining straight A's, she cultivated relationships based on what people could do for her. Our mother, Deborah, had always been easier on Chloe. My sister knew exactly which buttons to press, which tears to cry, which stories to spin. The shouting started before I could finish the equation I'd been working on. Deborah's voice carried through the walls with a fury I'd never heard directed at me. My stomach twisted as I heard my name being screamed, each syllable dripping with rage. I put down my pencil, hands already trembling, and walked toward the storm brewing inside our house. My mother stood in the hallway, her face flushed crimson, eyes blazing with an anger that made me step back instinctively. Chloe lingered behind her, and I caught the briefest flicker of something in her expression. Satisfaction, maybe, or triumph. Her eyes were red-rimmed, tears still fresh on her cheeks, but there was something calculated in the way she watched me. "You want to tell me what you did to your sister?" Deborah's voice shook with barely contained fury. I looked between them, genuinely confused. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been doing homework all afternoon. Don't you dare lie to me." The volume made me flinch. "Chloe told me everything. How could you do something so cruel to your own sister?" Chloe's shoulders shook with sobs that somehow seemed rehearsed. "I can't believe you're denying it. After what you said to me, after I what?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Chloe, I haven't even seen you since we got home from school. What are you saying I did?" Deborah stepped closer, and I could smell the wine on her breath. She'd been drinking again, which explained the explosive reaction but made the situation infinitely more dangerous. When she drank, reason fled, and emotion took over completely. "She told me how you've been tormenting her for weeks, stealing her things, spreading rumors about her at school, telling her she's worthless and that nobody in this family wants her around." Deborah's finger jabbed toward my chest with each accusation. "And today, when she confronted you about it, you told her she should just disappear because everyone would be happier without her." The words hit me like physical blows. None of it was true. Not a single syllable. I'd never said anything remotely like that to Chloe or anyone else. If anything, I'd been going out of my way to be supportive, helping her with her homework when she struggled, defending her when kids at school made fun of her braces. "Mom, that's not, I would never say those things. You know me. You know I wouldn't. I know you're standing here lying to my face while your sister is falling apart." Deborah's hand flew up, and I thought for a horrifying second that she might actually hit me. She'd never raised a hand to me before, but nothing about this moment felt familiar. "Hannah." The word was quiet, but it carried more weight than her shouting had. "What?" My voice barely qualified as a whisper. "Get out of my house." Each word landed like a separate verdict. I will not have someone who treats family like this under my roof. You want to be cruel? You want to destroy your sister's mental health? You can do it somewhere else. Outside, the storm had intensified. Rain lashed against the windows, and lightning illuminated the darkening sky. It was nearly 6 o'clock in the evening, the temperature dropping rapidly, and I had nowhere to go. "Mom, please. It's pouring outside. Can we just talk about this?" "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. Chloe told me everything, and unlike you, she doesn't lie." Deborah crossed her arms, her stance unyielding. "You have 10 minutes to pack a bag and leave. If you're not gone by then, I'm calling the police and having you removed." I looked at Chloe, silently begging her to tell the truth, to stop this madness before it went any further. She met my gaze for just a moment, and what I saw there chilled me more than the thought of being out in the storm. She wasn't going to say anything. She'd engineered this entire situation, and she was going to let it play out exactly as she'd planned. My father, David, was away on a business trip in Arizona. He traveled frequently for his consulting work, often gone for days or weeks at a time. He wouldn't be home until the weekend, 4 days away. I thought about calling him, but Deborah had already turned back to her bedroom, dismissing me entirely. I moved through my room in a daze, throwing clothes into my school backpack with shaking hands. My phone, charger, toothbrush, the emergency cash I kept in my desk drawer, about $80 I'd saved from babysitting. I grabbed my jacket, knowing it wouldn't be enough protection against the weather waiting outside. Chloe appeared in my doorway as I zipped up the bag. "Maybe this will teach you to be nicer," she said softly, just loud enough for me to hear. The tears were gone now, her face calm and composed. "Why?" The question came out broken. "Why are you doing this?" She shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "You've always been the favorite. Perfect grades, perfect daughter. Everyone always talking about how wonderful you are. Maybe now Mom will see you're not as great as everyone thinks." Before I could respond, Deborah's voice rang out from downstairs. "Time's up." I walked past Chloe, down the stairs, and toward the front door. My mother stood in the living room archway, arms still crossed, watching to make sure I actually left. The disappointment and disgust in her eyes hurt worse than anything else she'd done or said. "I love you, Mom. I tried one last time. Please don't do this. Out. Now." I opened the door, and the wind immediately whipped rain into my face. I stepped onto the porch, heard the door slam behind me, and then the definitive click of the lock engaging. Standing there in the deluge, backpack already soaking through, I'd never felt more abandoned in my entire life. The walk to the bus stop took 15 minutes that felt like hours. My sneakers were waterlogged within the first block, each step squishing uncomfortably. The jacket I grabbed did nothing against rain this heavy. Water streamed down my face, mixing with tears I couldn't hold back anymore. I had no plan, no destination. My best friend, Sarah, lived 3 miles away, but I couldn't show up at her door like this without explanation. And how could I possibly explain what had just happened? My grandmother lived in Texas, too far to be any help. My Aunt Susan had moved to Arizona last year. Everyone I could think to call would ask questions I didn't have answers to. The bus shelter provided minimal protection from the weather. I sat on the metal bench, pulled my knees to my chest, and tried to think. My phone showed 6:47 p.m. I pulled up my father's contact, fingers hovering over the call button. He was in meetings all evening, he'd told us during breakfast before he left. But this qualified as an emergency, didn't it? Before I could decide, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. My mother's name appeared on the screen, and for a wild moment, I thought maybe she'd realized her mistake, that she was calling me back home, that this nightmare was over. The message made my blood run cold. OMG, that was perfect. Did you see her face? I've never seen anyone look so pathetic. She actually thought I was going to let her explain. Slightly smiling face, slightly smiling face, slightly smiling face, my hands went numb. This wasn't meant for me. The message was clearly intended for Chloe, but Mom had sent it to me by mistake, probably because our names were next to each other in her contacts. A second message followed immediately, delete this. Wrong person. Then a third, don't you dare tell your father about this. I stared at the screen, rain continuing to pour around me as the full scope of what had happened crystallized into painful clarity. This wasn't just Chloe's lie. My mother had been in on it. They planned this together. The false accusations, the theatrical outrage, kicking me out into a storm. It had all been orchestrated specifically to hurt me. My phone rang. Deborah's name flashed across the screen. I didn't answer. She called again and again, 6 times in rapid succession, each call going to voicemail. Text messages started flooding in, answer your phone right now. This isn't funny. Call me back. You're overreacting. It was just a joke. Fine, be dramatic. You can come home when you're done being ridiculous. I powered off my phone and sat in the darkening bus shelter, watching headlights blur through the rain-streaked plastic walls. Something fundamental had broken inside me. Not my heart. That would have been cleaner, simpler. This was deeper. A severing of trust so complete that I could physically feel where my family used to exist inside my chest and found only hollow space. A city bus pulled up, and the driver looked at me with concern. You getting on, honey? You're soaked through. I didn't know where the bus was going, but I climbed aboard anyway, paying the fare with wet dollar bills from my backpack. The driver, an older woman named Eleanor according to her name tag, frowned at my appearance. You okay? You need me to call someone for you? I'm fine, I lied. Just meeting my dad at the next stop. She didn't look convinced, but she nodded and put the bus in gear. I found a seat near the back and tried to process what to do next. The phone messages replayed in my mind, each word a fresh injury. It was just a joke. They'd thrown me out into a storm as a joke. The bus wound through streets I barely recognized, and I rode it to the end of the line without any real plan forming. When Eleanor announced the final stop, she approached me instead of simply ushering me off. Sweetheart, I don't know what's going on, but I've been driving this route for 18 years, and I know what a kid in trouble looks like. She handed me a card with a phone number written in neat handwriting. That's the Youth Crisis Hotline. They can help you figure out what to do, find you somewhere safe to stay. Please call them. I took the card, mumbled a thank you, and stepped back into the rain. The storm hadn't let up at all. If anything, it seemed angrier than before. I found myself walking without direction, muscle memory carrying me through neighborhoods I'd known my whole life, but that now felt alien and hostile. Everything familiar had become untrustworthy. Eventually, my wandering brought me to the Maplewood Animal Shelter where I volunteered every Saturday. The building was dark and locked, but the covered entrance area provided shelter from the worst of the weather. I sat against the wall, backpack beside me, and finally allowed myself to fall apart. The tears came hard and silent, my body shaking with sobs I couldn't control. 15 years old, thrown away like garbage because my sister wanted attention and my mother thought it was funny. Hours passed in a blur of cold and misery. At some point, I must have fallen into an exhausted half-sleep because I jolted awake to the sound of footsteps approaching. My heart hammered with sudden fear until I recognized George, the shelter's night security guard. Hannah, what in the world are you doing here? His kind face creased with worry as he took in my soaked clothes and obvious distress. Child, you're frozen. Come inside right now. He unlocked the door and ushered me into the shelter's lobby, immediately wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. The warmth of the building felt almost painful against my chilled skin. I'm going to make you some tea, and then you're going to tell me what's happened, George said firmly but gently. And don't even think about telling me you're fine because I have 3 daughters of my own, and I know that look. The whole story spilled out while I sat in his office, hands wrapped around a mug of hot tea I couldn't quite stop shaking enough to drink. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail I shared. Do you have the messages still? The ones your mother sent by accident? I'd turned my phone off hours ago, but when I powered it back on, I had 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages. Most were from Deborah, progressing from angry to threatening to almost panicked. A few were from Chloe, telling me I was being immature. None were apologies, but the original messages were still there, clear evidence of what they'd done. I need you to do something for me, George said seriously. I need you to let me call your father right now. What your mother did isn't just cruel, it's not right. You're a minor, and she can't just throw you out of your house. Storm or not, joke or not, he's in Arizona for work. He can't. Then he needs to know what's happening in his house while he's gone. George was already reaching for his office phone. What's his number? My father answered on the second ring, his voice groggy with sleep. It was after 2 a.m. in Arizona. Hello, Mr. Brennan. This is George Peterson. I'm the night security guard at the Maplewood Animal Shelter where your daughter, Hannah, volunteers. I have her here with me, and there's a situation you need to be aware of immediately. I could hear my father's voice shift from sleepy confusion to sharp alertness. Hannah? What's wrong? Is she hurt? George handed me the phone. You tell him. He needs to hear it from you. My voice broke on the first word, and then everything came pouring out again. Chloe's lies, Deborah's rage, being thrown out into the storm. The text messages that revealed the whole thing had been planned. My father's breathing got heavier with each sentence. I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to tell me the absolute truth, he said when I finished. His voice was steady, but I could hear fury underneath. Did you say or do any of the things Chloe accused you of? No, none of it. I swear, Dad. I believe you. The certainty in his voice made tears spring to my eyes again. I'm getting on the next available flight. I'll be home by morning. In the meantime, I'm calling your Aunt Susan. She lives 20 minutes from the shelter. She's going to come get you, and you're staying with her until I arrive. Do not go home. Do not respond to any messages from your mother or sister. Do you understand? Yes. Put Mr. Peterson back on the phone. I handed over the receiver and listened to my father explain the situation to someone he'd never met, making arrangements for my immediate safety. When George hung up, he gave me a small smile. Your dad sounds like a good man. He's scared for you, but he's handling it. Your aunt is on her way. She should be here in about 30 minutes. Aunt Susan arrived in 22 minutes, still in her pajamas with a raincoat thrown over them. She took one look at me and pulled me into a fierce hug that finally made me feel safe for the first time in hours. Oh, sweetheart. Oh, my dear girl, what Deborah did. She pulled back, hands on my shoulders, her eyes blazing. You're safe now. You're coming home with me, and nobody is going to hurt you again. Her house was warm and quiet. She showed me to the guest room, gave me dry clothes that were too big but wonderfully soft, and sat with me while I tried to eat the soup she'd heated up. I couldn't manage more than a few bites. Try to get some rest, she said, tucking blankets around me like I was a small child. Your father will be here soon, and then we'll figure out what happens next. I slept fitfully, nightmares mixing with memory until I couldn't tell them apart. When I woke, gray morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains. Voices carried from downstairs, my father's deep rumble and Aunt Susan's quieter responses. I found them in the kitchen. My father looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight, his eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. When he saw me, he crossed the room in 3 strides and wrapped me in his arms. I'm so sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry I wasn't there, that I didn't see what was happening, that you went through that alone. We sat at Aunt Susan's kitchen table, and I showed him the text messages. I watched his jaw tighten as he read the evidence of what Deborah and Chloe had done, the casual cruelty in those laughing emojis. This ends now, he said quietly. I've already spoken to a lawyer. What your mother did constitutes child endangerment and neglect. Those text messages prove premeditation, which makes it worse. What does that mean? I asked. It means we're documenting everything. It means I'm filing for emergency custody of you. It means your mother is going to face consequences for what she's done. He looked at me, his expression both gentle and determined. And it means you get to decide how much contact you want with her and Chloe going forward. If the answer is none, I will support that completely. We drove to the house later that morning. My father had called ahead, informing Deborah that he was coming to collect my belongings and that I wouldn't be staying there anymore. She tried to argue, claiming I was being overdramatic about a harmless prank, but he cut her off. "We'll discuss the legality of your harmless prank with a lawyer I've retained," he told her before hanging up. Deborah and Chloe were both in the living room when we arrived. My mother's face was splotchy from crying, her hair uncombed. Chloe sat on the couch, arms crossed, wearing an expression that suggested she was the wrong party in this situation. "David, thank goodness." Deborah started toward him. "Maybe you can talk some sense into your daughter. She's completely overreacted to a joke and now she's stopped talking." My father's voice was ice. "Stop. Right now. Before you say something else that my lawyer will be very interested to hear." Deborah's mouth snapped shut. She looked between us, seeming to realize for the first time that this wasn't going to be smoothed over with excuses and explanations. "Hannah is going to pack her things, and then we're leaving," Dad continued. "You and I will communicate through attorneys from this point forward regarding custody arrangements and the legal consequences of your actions." "Legal consequences?" Deborah's voice pitched higher. "It was a joke. We were going to let her back in after an hour. Let her see that we pranked her. She wasn't supposed to run off and make this huge dramatic thing. You threw a 15-year-old child out of her home during a severe thunderstorm based on fabricated accusations, then sent text messages laughing about her distress." My father's control was impressive. His fury contained but clearly visible. "That's not a prank. That's a deliberate act of cruelty toward a child. And those text messages are evidence of premeditation." I'd never seen my mother look so pale. "You can't be serious. You're going to involve lawyers over this. You involved the police in your threats to call them if Hannah didn't leave fast enough," he countered. "You made this legal the moment you did that." I left them arguing in the living room and went to my room. Looking around at the space I'd occupied for 15 years, I felt nothing but the urge to leave as quickly as possible. I packed methodically. Clothes, books, the photographs I cared about, my laptop, the jewelry box my grandmother had given me. Everything that mattered fit into 2 suitcases and a few boxes. As I folded clothes into my suitcase, my hands found the sweater Deborah had given me for Christmas last year. She'd made such a show of picking it out, claiming she'd spent weeks finding the perfect color. I held it for a moment, then dropped it on the floor. She could keep her gifts. The walls were covered with photos and ribbons from track meets, honor roll certificates, volunteer appreciation awards, evidence of a life I'd worked hard to build. None of it had mattered when Chloe decided she wanted to tear me down. I pulled down the photos that included only me and my father, leaving the family pictures where they hung. Those belonged to a version of us that didn't exist anymore. My phone buzzed constantly in my pocket. I pulled it out to see messages from classmates I barely knew. People from school who'd somehow already heard something had happened. Small towns moved fast when it came to gossip. I turned off notifications and kept packing. The jewelry box contained more than just accessories. Inside was a locket my grandmother had worn every day until she gave it to me on my 13th birthday. For my serious granddaughter, she'd said with a smile, the one who thinks before she speaks and loves without conditions. Deborah had rolled her eyes at the comment, claiming Grandma was playing favorites. Maybe she had been. Maybe she'd seen something in our family dynamics that I'd been too young to recognize. I found my old journals in the back of my closet, spiral notebooks filled with years of thoughts and feelings. Part of me wanted to leave them behind, erase that history entirely. But these were mine, proof that I'd existed as myself before everything fell apart. I added them to the box I was filling. The door creaked, and I tensed, expecting Chloe. Instead, my father stepped into the room. His presence filled the doorway, solid and reassuring in a way I desperately needed. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly. "I don't know yet," I admitted. Part of me still can't believe this is actually happening. He moved into the room, picking up one of the boxes I'd packed. I should have seen this coming. The way your mother always made excuses for Chloe's behavior. The way she dismissed your accomplishments as if they weren't important. I told myself I was imagining the favoritism. You travel a lot for work. You weren't here to see all of it. That's not an excuse. His voice carried a guilt I didn't want him to feel. I'm your father. I should have paid better attention. I should have questioned why you always seemed a little separate from them. Like you were being careful all the time. He was right about that last part. I had been careful, walking on eggshells I hadn't fully acknowledged I was navigating. Always making sure my successes didn't overshadow Chloe's struggles. Downplaying my achievements so Deborah wouldn't make those comments about not everyone being naturally gifted. Apologizing for things I hadn't done just to keep peace in the house. What happens now? I asked about the custody stuff. I mean, the lawyer I spoke to specializes in family law. She's going to file emergency custody papers on Monday morning, citing child endangerment. Those text messages your mother sent are smoking gun evidence. No judge is going to look at a parent laughing about throwing their kid out in a storm and think that's acceptable behavior. Will I have to see them for court or whatever? There will be a hearing, yes. You'll need to tell your story to the judge, but I'll be there with you every second. So will our lawyer. He sat down the box and looked at me directly. Hannah, I need you to understand something. What happened wasn't your fault, not any part of it. Chloe lied because she wanted to hurt you, and your mother participated because... He stopped, struggling for words. I honestly don't know why she did what she did. But none of it reflects on you. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Do you want to take your desk? He asked, clearly trying to give me a moment to compose myself. It won't fit in my car today, but I can rent a truck and come back for furniture if you want it. I looked at the desk where I'd spent countless hours studying, writing, dreaming about college and careers and futures that seemed possible when I was alone in this room. No, I don't want any of it. Just what fits in these bags and boxes. We worked together in silence for a while, packing up the pieces of my life that still mattered. My father moved with steady efficiency, but I caught him pausing occasionally, his expression darkening as if remembering new details of what Deborah had done. She called me 17 times last night, he said eventually. After you talked to me and I said I was getting on a plane. She started with anger. How dare I make this into such a big deal? How I was undermining her parenting. How you'd always been overdramatic. Then came bargaining. She promised it would never happen again. Swore she'd go to therapy. Begged me not to involve lawyers. What did you say? I told her she should have thought about consequences before she threw our daughter away like garbage. His hands tightened on the book he was holding. Then I hung up and bought a plane ticket. I've never been so angry in my entire life, Hannah. The things I wanted to say to her. He shook his head. The lawyer advised me not to communicate with her directly anymore. Everything goes through attorneys now. Is that why she looked so scared when we got here? She received the preliminary custody filing this morning. Hand-delivered by a process server at 7 a.m. She knows this isn't going away, that she can't charm or manipulate her way out of legal consequences. He managed a grim smile. Your mother has always been very good at making people believe her version of events. But judges care about facts, and the facts are damning. We carried the first load of boxes downstairs. Deborah was nowhere to be seen, but I could hear her crying in the kitchen, the sound theatrical and loud. Chloe sat exactly where we'd left her, scrolling through her phone with studied indifference. Dad's really doing this? She asked without looking up. Taking you away over something so stupid? My father's voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. Chloe, I strongly suggest you stop talking. Anything you say right now will make this situation worse for you and your mother. She finally looked up, and something in his expression made her flinch. I was just trying to. I know exactly what you were trying to do. You wanted attention. You wanted to hurt your sister, and you didn't care about the consequences. Congratulations. You got what you wanted. He gestured toward the kitchen where Deborah's crying continued. You have your mother all to yourself now. I hope you enjoy it. We made 3 more trips, loading his car until the trunk and back seat were completely full. On the final trip, Deborah emerged from the kitchen, mascara running down her face. Please don't do this, she whispered. David, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. But she's my daughter. You can't just take her from me. My father's laugh was harsh and humorless. I'm not taking her from you. You threw her away. I'm just giving her a home where she's wanted and safe. It was supposed to be funny. We were going to surprise her. Let her see we decorated her room. That it was all just a prank to teach her. Deborah's voice broke. She wasn't supposed to disappear for hours. She wasn't supposed to involve strangers and make this into some huge legal thing. Teach me what exactly? I heard myself ask. Both of them turned to look at me. What lesson was I supposed to learn from being thrown out in the storm? Deborah's mouth opened and closed. You'd been distant lately, spending all your time on schoolwork and that shelter. I wanted you to appreciate your family more, to see that you needed us. So, you and Chloe conspired to terrorize me, then laughed about how pathetic I looked when you succeeded? My voice was steady now, detached. And you genuinely thought that would make me appreciate you more? Deborah's face crumpled. I was drunk. I didn't mean those things the way they sounded. Mom, stop. The word felt wrong in my mouth now. Too intimate for what she'd become. Stop making excuses. Stop trying to rewrite what happened. You did this. You chose this, and now you get to live with the consequences. My father put his hand on my shoulder. We're done here. Hannah, get in the car. As we pulled out of the driveway, I saw Deborah standing on the porch, still crying, still playing the victim in a tragedy of her own creation. Chloe had joined her, arms crossed, watching us leave with an expression I couldn't quite read. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. I felt tired, hollowed out, like something essential had been carved away, and I was still figuring out what remained. The next months brought changes I couldn't have imagined that stormy night. Living with my father in his downtown apartment felt strange at first. The space was modern and minimalist, nothing like the house I'd grown up in. He'd converted his home office into a bedroom for me, apologizing for how bare it was. We'll get you whatever you need, he'd said that first week. Furniture, decorations, whatever makes this feel like home. But I found I didn't want much. The simplicity was refreshing after the chaos of Deborah's house, where every surface had been covered with decorative objects and family photos that now felt like lies. I hung my honor roll certificates on one wall, put my books on the shelf he'd installed, and called it done. School became complicated in ways I hadn't anticipated. News of what happened had spread through the hallways like wildfire, mutating with each retelling. Some versions had me running away over a minor disagreement. Others claimed I'd been mistreated for years and finally escaped. A few suggested I'd fabricated everything for attention. My best friend, Sarah, cornered me at my locker the first day back. Why didn't you call me? She demanded. I would have come to get you. You know that, right? You didn't have to sit in a bus shelter all night. I wasn't thinking clearly, I admitted. I just needed to get away from there. She hugged me fiercely. Your mom is insane. Everyone's talking about what she did. The text messages are everywhere. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, everywhere? Someone leaked them online. They're all over social media. Everyone's seen them. I pulled out my phone and searched my mother's name. Sure enough, screenshots of her messages had been shared hundreds of times, accompanied by outraged comments about harmful parenting and deliberate cruelty. Someone had even created a hashtag. The story had gone viral locally, with news outlets picking it up as an example of social media pranks gone wrong. Deborah must have been mortified. Her entire social circle would have seen the evidence of what she'd done. Read her cruel laughter in her own words. Part of me felt vindicated. A larger part felt sick that this private nightmare had become public entertainment. I didn't share them, I told Sarah. I don't know who did. Does it matter? She deserves it. What she did to you was evil. The attention was overwhelming. Teachers looked at me with obvious pity. Students I barely knew stopped me in hallways to offer support or ask intrusive questions about that night. I started eating lunch in the library just to avoid the cafeteria conversations. My grades, which had always been excellent, became my refuge. Homework was something I could control. Problems with clear solutions and definite answers. I threw myself into studying with an intensity that worried my father. "You're allowed to just exist for a while," he told me gently one evening, finding me at the kitchen table surrounded by textbooks at midnight. "You don't have to be perfect right now." "I don't know how to just exist," I said. "Every time I stop working, I start thinking about what happened, and I can't." My voice cracked. "I need to stay busy." He sat down across from me, pushing my calculus book aside. "We need to talk about therapy. Dr. Miller comes highly recommended. She specializes in family trauma, and I think talking to her might help." "I'm fine." "You're not sleeping. You're having panic attacks when it rains. You flinch every time your phone buzzes because you think it might be your mother trying to contact you again." His eyes were kind but firm. "You're surviving, which is incredible. But you deserve more than just survival." I started seeing Dr. Miller twice a week. The first few sessions I barely spoke. She didn't push, just sat with me in comfortable silence, occasionally asking gentle questions that I could choose to answer or ignore. "You're carrying a lot of guilt," she observed during our fourth meeting. "Guilt that doesn't belong to you." I keep thinking about what I could have done differently. If I'd just gone to Chloe when I got home from school, talked to her before she had a chance to make up those lies. If I'd been a better sister, maybe she wouldn't have wanted to hurt me. "Do you genuinely believe you deserved what happened to you?" The question stopped me cold. No, but I should have seen it coming. Should have recognized that Chloe resented me, that my mother favored her. I was naive. You were 15 years old, trusting that your family loved you. That's not naive. That's normal. Dr. Miller leaned forward slightly. What your mother and sister did wasn't a failure on your part. It was a choice they made. A cruel, calculated choice. You can acknowledge your feelings about wishing things were different without accepting blame for their actions. The conversations helped, slowly. She gave me tools for managing the anxiety that spiked whenever I saw someone who looked like Deborah in public or heard Chloe's name mentioned at school. We worked on rebuilding my ability to trust people, to believe that not everyone would betray me the way my family had. Meanwhile, my father filed for divorce, citing the incident as proof of Deborah's unfitness as a parent. The text messages she'd sent became central evidence, impossible for her to explain away. Her lawyer tried to claim they'd been taken out of context, but there was no context that made laughing about throwing your child into a storm acceptable. I testified in the custody hearing, describing everything that happened. The judge's expression grew increasingly severe as I showed him the messages, explained the lies Chloe had told, detailed the hours I'd spent alone in the rain. "Mrs. Brennan," the judge said, "I've presided over many difficult cases, but I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty toward a child. Your actions weren't just negligent. They were deliberately harmful. The court finds your explanation of this being a prank to be neither credible nor relevant." Even if we accepted that characterization, subjecting a minor to this treatment would still constitute severe mistreatment. He awarded my father full custody. Deborah got supervised visitation, which I declined to participate in. Chloe, now facing the consequences of her actions, tried to apologize through a letter. I returned it unread. My mother's friends and family members who heard what happened split into camps. Some believed her version, that I'd blown everything out of proportion, that she'd made a mistake but didn't deserve to lose her daughter. Others, particularly after seeing the text messages, cut ties with her entirely. My grandmother stopped speaking to her for 6 months. Aunt Susan became a steady presence in my life, the maternal figure I needed. She helped me find a therapist to process what had happened, supported me through the nightmares and panic attacks that followed, celebrated my acceptance to college 3 years later. The storm that night had been terrifying, but the real damage had come from the people who were supposed to love me most, weaponizing that fear for their own amusement. It took years to trust people again, to believe that someone claiming to care about me actually meant it. I'm 29 now, working as a veterinarian. Those Saturday volunteer hours at the shelter became a career. I've built a life surrounded by people who value honesty and kindness. I'm married to someone who thinks the idea of treating family as a joke is incomprehensible. Deborah has tried to reconnect multiple times over the years. Cards on birthdays and holidays, emails asking for another chance, messages claiming she's changed. I don't respond. Chloe reached out when she got engaged, wanting me at her wedding, unable to understand why I wouldn't celebrate with her. I sent back a one-line message, "You made your choice that night. I'm making mine now." My father and Aunt Susan walk my dogs with me every Sunday. We have dinner together once a week. We celebrate holidays as a family that chose each other, not just shared DNA. And sometimes, on rainy nights when thunder rolls across the sky, I stand at my window and remember the girl who walked out into that storm with nothing but a backpack and $80. She survived. She built something better than what she lost. And sometimes, I still think about it all, and wonder, how do you even begin to rebuild trust when it's been shattered by the people who were supposed to protect you most?